Peace to you. This will be my last reading of the book, and I'm sorry I'm late. I wanted to finish it before the end of Passover, but extenuating circumstances. So we're now closing with the rest of the chapter called The State of Israel, and it was cut short, so I'm going to go over the last couple of sentences in order that you will understand. Whether in combination with the general Zionists or with the religious bloc, such labor leaders as Ben-Gurion and Ben-Zvi were in charge of the main branches of the administration of the old National Council, just as they have held the main cabinet posts since 1948. To be sure, the recent elections showing a gradual erosion of Mapai's voting, actually it's Mapai's voting power may be ominous for the future development of the party system. One may only hope that a way will be found to secure some balance between authority and freedom, between firm government controls and liberty of political expression and association, which, as a new country beset with difficult problems, Israel needs even more than the rest of the world. You know, it's looking back, and this is a very old publication, so we could transfer the word Israel to Palestine and see if the same standards would be upheld. Or would that not make any sense? Only one state has a right to exist, and the other one doesn't? And all of this, that's written here, was written by an intellectual academic who's very honest and forthright and clear. So we ought to return back to these types of people instead of the dirty politicians we're dealing with now, the hypocrites. We don't want them. Should turn back to academics, like someone I know. Listen to them, and of course, pay attention to your scriptures and find out what happens when you don't listen. Another major problem arises from the country's peculiar population structure. How sweet, peculiar. Trying to maintain. Given the fundamental character of the law of return, it has strained all its resources to admit Jewish immigrants. Israel's Jewish population more than doubled in the first 5 years of its national existence. The influx has slackened in the last 2 or 3 years, partly because the country's absorptive capacity had reached its limit, and partly because of the emptying of the main reservoirs of Jewish manpower in Europe and in the Near East, such as the DP camps, Bulgaria, and Yemen. More recently, only precarious North African Jewry has furnished large contingents of migrants. North Africa. The great question is whether the countries behind the Iron Curtain will open their doors for Jewish immigration. Many Romanian, Hungarian, Polish, and possibly even Soviet Jews are apparently anxious to leave for Israel as soon as they are allowed to do so. In the case of Jewish citizens of democratic countries, there is no legal obstacle to their immigration to Israel. But so far, only a relative small number of idealists and skilled technicians have chosen the road to Jerusalem. Such immigration, if it became great enough, would have the effect of slowing down the progressive Orientalization, in parentheses, Karping critics say Levantinization, close parentheses, of the population. The government of Israel is anxious to promote this emigration publicly, despite the explosive reactions among Jews in Western lands who are fearful that the specter of double allegiance will thus be evoked. Like the whole accusation of divided allegiance This may be only a figment of the imagination. Yet because it is widely believed in, it constitutes a considerable problem. Right now, in 2024, it is a considerable problem. Double Israeli-American citizenship. Israel's melting pot has thus far proved even more effective than similar assimilatory processes elsewhere. Although the country is suffering from a great shortage of Hebrew teachers, some time ago there were 3,000 vacancies. Hebrew education, particularly of children, has made tremendous progress. Army service and the Hakshara, pioneer agricultural training, have likewise brought together young people of diverse origin and converted them into full-fledged Israeli citizens. Nonetheless, the task ahead is still staggering. Complaints are heard about economic and social discrimination by the entrenched older segments of European origin against the more recent Near Eastern and North African arrivals. Marriage between the Ashkenazic and Sephardic Jews is sometimes spoken of as intermarriage. Although no one envisages the emergence of a full-fledged racial problem in Israel, the strains and stresses incident to amalgamation of diverse groups into a united nation are causing much individual hardship. The presence of some 170,000 Arabs, both Muslim and Christian, has only made the problem of the melting pot still more complex. Yes, wouldn't it be complex that these people have lived there thousands of years? Wouldn't that make it more complex? After we've already previously discussed the North Africans and where were we? Let's go up and let's see how many. Oh yes, Bulgaria, Yemen, Hungary. Oh, we gave them much attention first. Now let's turn to the inhabitants, the original Palestinians. I'm glad we didn't forget them. The presence of some 170,000 Arabs, both Muslim and Christian, has only made the problems of the melting pot still more complex. In principle, the fundamental laws call for the complete equality of all citizens. The Arabs have full franchise and send their own elected representatives to the Knesset. Knesset, in case you don't know, is the government. Yet their loyalties are not above suspicion, so that the government has had to adopt certain emergency police measures, curtailing some of their freedoms, at least until peace is restored. Government and public alike are fully aware that their treatment of the Arab minority cannot but affect their position of their co-religionists in other lands. Finally, there are tremendous economic problems. Thus far, the country has been greatly aided by foreign funds. Thus far, from the beginning until now, greatly aided by foreign funds, UJA campaigns, and Israel bond drives in the United States and other countries, investments by private capital, loans extended to Israel by the United States government and foreign financial institutions. And in the last 3 years, the goods imported from Germany under the heading of restitution for Jewish material claims have all greatly helped Israel's economy. In this, Israel is not unique, for many of the older and most powerful nations, including Britain, France, and Italy, have likewise depended for several years on Marshall Plan funds for their for their reconstruction, even today American foreign aid is still an indispensable budgetary resource of many lands. In 8 years, Israel has made tremendous strides toward self-sufficiency. Despite centuries of neglect and shortage of water, Israel's agriculture is nearly supplying all of the country's needs in foodstuffs and farming raw materials. Industrial progress is even more startling. The country is, of course, short of such basic raw materials as coal and iron. It has spent some $40 million annually, dollars that is, in importing oil from distant countries, being unable to get it from neighboring Iraq or Saudi Arabia. However, the newly drilled oil wells are already supplying liquid fuel and gas for Israeli industry. Intensive research aimed at the direct utilization of sun rays for power is underway. Solar power, huh? Long ago. Let's see now, 50, 60, 75 years ago. This is a promising undertaking, indeed, in a country blessed with cloudless skies for months on end. Before long, atomic energy may displace the need for traditional fuels, and Israeli scientists may well be able to convert simple seawater into all the energy the country needs. In short, Israel no longer requires the proverbial miracle to achieve a self-supporting economy, even one with a relatively high standard of life. Funny how he says high standard of life and not standard of living. And funny how he says Israel no longer requires the proverbial miracle, in quotes. You don't believe in miracles? You could ask Allah to send down whatever you need. You could. I think they will now. What will all this mean to world Jewry? It is difficult for us to envisage a time when there will be no bond, UJA, or JDC campaigns. Perhaps the cessation of emergency situations abroad would create an emergency in American Jewish community life, such that the loss would be greater to American Jewry than to the foreign recipients. Pause. Emergency situation. Greater to American Jewry. But for the near future, Jewry in the dispersion, that's funny. It's called dispersion instead of diaspora. We'll still have to marshal vast resources in money, manpower, and diplomatic and technical skills to help Israel weather the recurrent crises which it is bound to face. Israel has already repaid much of its debt to diaspora Jewry. However, and it is going to do so in an ever-increasing measure. During the few years of its existence, it has already instilled in a great many older and younger Jews a new sense of pride and belonging, no matter what complications may arise for many Jewish groups because of Israel's international conflicts. No matter how many sacrifices in money and energy Israel's upbuilding will require also from Jews of other lands, and no matter how many heartaches will be occasioned by certain acts of the Israeli government or its people, of which individual Jews elsewhere may not approve, all these will be episodes quickly forgotten in the perennial historic procession of the Jewish people, in whose vanguard Israel, together with the best of other Jewish communities, will be marching. This may best be exemplified by the impact it has already made and will increasingly make in the future upon the destinies of American Jewry. Now, before closing, and the next lesson will not necessarily be about Israel or the history of Israel, it will be about the Quranic verses that are very pertinent right now, that nobody talks about except me. So now, let us just pause and turn back in this very wonderful book. I mean, I really do believe that this book is well written, and it should have respect, and it should have those paying attention to what the author has reminded us of. And I'm trying to find here, I thought I had put a card in it talking about describing the Jews as the merciful sons of the merciful fathers. Banu Rahim, Min, but I'm sorry I couldn't remember it because it has the root Rahama. It means mercy. And in the Quran we say, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We ask Allah in His name, Ar-Rahman, Ir-Rahim, the most merciful. So the languages, Hebrew and Arabic, are extremely closely tied. They come from the same root. We say the root is Arabic. We say it's the first language ever from Adam. Some people disagree. Anyway, I'll put that actually. You see, Allah didn't want me to find it, even though I dropped the marker. He wanted it to be in the next lesson, which is going to be the Quranic verses. So I will begin my lesson in the name of Allah, because we begin when we read Quran. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. But we can use Rahman or Rahim anytime we want. If we truly believe that all mercy comes from Allah, forever, to all people, even to disbelievers. Yes, you can look back into my channel and you can find that I did an entire lesson on Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. So right now, we're closing at 17 minutes. We're closing the chapter from this book, Great Ages and Ideas of the Jewish People. I highly recommend this book, edited by Leo W. Schwartz. And I'm sure you can find it in older bookstores, maybe even on Amazon. But it's worth it because aside from some sentimentality, it's very accurate. And you can't blame people for being sentimental for what they believe in. I'm sentimental about America. I'm very upset with it right now. Ashamed of it, yes. But I'm still an American because I remember what it was and what it could be. But you know, I have to say this. Allah says in the Quran that He owns everything on earth and He will cause it to be inherited by His faithful servants. So when I first realized that America's been at war since its inception, and it always wins. It always wins. Until it didn't. It didn't win in Vietnam, because that was a totally unjust war. And then it didn't win in Iraq and Afghanistan. So we have to pause now and reflect, stop and think. Don't want any more wars. Because the track record now, I wouldn't bet on it. I'm sorry. Assalamu alaikum. Peace to you.